Hello my friends, I'm just out here picking my Haskap berries. It's one of the first berries to come ripe in the spring and come ripe around the same time as your first strawberries. I don't know how well I get this in the camera. There you go. There's a Haskap berry. They pop right off when they're ripe. You can even shake the plant and they'll fall off. Different varieties of plants will make a slightly different variety of berry. Some are sweeter, some are a little more sour, but once they're ripe they're all pretty tasty. So I'm gonna pick what I can off this plant here, and we'll make some Haskap berry jam. This one is getting eaten though. Alright, I picked a bunch of my Haskaps here. This will be enough to start. I'm only making a half recipe for the jam. I'll put the full recipe in the description, of course. I've already made a full batch and I don't need two full batches, so these are my nicer berries, the ones that get bigger and sweeter. So I make a half batch just for myself and for a few friends that appreciate the taste of it. But yeah, so I'll take this in the house, give it a good wash with some cold water. I also like to use a perforated container so that any bugs or dirt or anything can fall through, or helps to keep them clean. So yeah, I'll take this in the house, wash them, and get started on turning them into jam. So straight from the garden to the canning jar. Alright, I brought the berries up to the house. I weighed them. It's actually 710 grams, so that works out perfect for what I'm doing. Is half a recipe. The full recipe would be 1.4 kilograms. So I don't know what that is in ounces and whatnot, but because the recipe I have written down is in metric. But yeah, I will put the recipe in the description. I am just doing a half recipe. So I've washed the berries and dried them off. I have some cane sugar, organic non-GMO. All cane sugar is organic and non-GMO, so don't worry about the fancy labeling. As long as it's pure cane sugar, it will be a non-GMO product. So I like to use cane sugar in the jam. I'm going to try some jam with honey, but that's not for this video. Okay, I got some lemon juice for the citric acid. I'll be using a liquid pectin. This is the Bernardin. That's also the recipe I'll be following, is their recipe. So inside the box you get your pouches of pectin. You also get a recipe sheet with all the directions you need. Make all sorts of jams, cooked jam, I believe freezer jams. That's the French part of it, but whatever. So anyways, these are Haskaps, and all recommendations are to follow blueberry. So I will put the recipe for the blueberry jam, I'll just name it Haskap, in the description below. So yeah, the ingredients are real simple. You got your berries, you have your sugar, some lemon juice for your citric acid, and I got a pot to put that in. Anytime you're cooking sugar, make sure the pot is much larger than your ingredients, or else it will overflow. I have a pot with water on the go. It's not quite ready yet. And this will process the canning jars. I got the lids. I'm going to warm up some water. This will keep the gummy part soft, so when I go to seal them, it should give me a good seal. And also keep them sanitary. Oh, I guess the one ingredient is going to be some maple syrup. Put a little bit of that in, give it a nice flavor. That's my secret ingredient. So yeah, okay, so the canning jars. Okay, I've set the oven to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. This is to keep my canning jars sanitized. They've been washed and sanitized. but this will keep them nice and warm. I'm doing hot pack with jam, so there'll be no shock to the glass. They'll be warm, keeps them clean. Make sure they stay clean until I need them. So yeah, just leave them in here until I do need them. Again, just the lowest setting. As long as it's over 160 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll do the trick. Alright, got the pot ready for the jam. First thing I'm going to do, add a little bit of secret ingredient, a little bit of maple syrup. I add that to the bottom of the pan, so when it starts heating up, it's going to cook that a bit. It's going to give off a really nice flavor. Kind of that cooked sugar. That's very nice in a jam. That's an ingredient you do not have to add, of course. Okay, so this is a jam, not a jelly, so it's going to have the berries in it. So what you want to do is just start off with a few. Don't put them all in there at once. I just use a metal potato masher, and I mash them all down, release the juice out of there, break them up a bit. Now these berries, Haskap berries, when you put them in your mouth, they just melt, so there's no hard seeds or thick skin. So they're really nice, they cook up very nice. Okay, and you want to heat this up on medium heat, medium high maybe. Mine's on a scale of low to high, 1 to 10, so it's on about 6, I guess. Every stove is different. You do not want to do it on high. You don't want to burn the sugar. But yeah, I always start off with some maple syrup in there, and then do layers of berries. Add a few in at once. Again, this is just a half recipe I'm doing, so a full recipe there'll be quite a few more berries. And you don't want to use a food processor or something and make them into a mush. That will not give you a good jam. You want to do it by hand. And how much you do, it's up to you, what you like with the finished product, you know. I like to have chunks of fruit in my jam. When I spread my jam on the toast or the biscuit or something, I like to have a berry on there, you know. So I don't really break them up too much. But you have to break them up, get that pectin working, releasing those juices. And Haskaps are full of pectin, so you don't have to worry too much about the recipe not turning out or being runny. So far I've had good luck with it. You just follow the directions that come with your pectin additive. I'm using the liquid pectin because this fruit was fresh on the bush before I did this. It's going to get cooked up and then canned right away. So yeah, pickles and jams are pretty much your really easy to do preserving for your garden. So if you're growing pretty much anything, you should learn one or the other or both. They're really easy. And if they're sealed, they're safe. You can be confident about the food safety of it. And the temperatures I'm getting to today will sterilize anything. Okay, so like I said, you can break it up as much or as little as you want, as long as you're releasing those juices. I do want some berries left in there. Okay. So once you got your berries, you can add your lemon juice. You can add your sugar. I don't like to pour it in all at once, just like the berries. I pour in a little bit and I start mixing it up. I turn on the heat as soon as I put the berries. I start mashing the berries. And you stir it up too now with the sugar going in there. You can see the consistency of it, whether or not you should mash it up some more. I think I might give it a few more, just because I won't be the only one eating it. So. Yeah, this has quickly become one of my favorite jams. This and strawberry jam, I think. Strawberries have always been my favorite. I never knew about these berries till, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. They make wonderful pies also. So yeah, there, I've got all my ingredients in there. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. I'm going to keep stirring it. And the sugar doesn't stick to the bottom or to the sides. Make sure you scrape down the sides, you get the sugar crystallizing on it. And now as it heats, that sugar will melt in better, and once it comes to a boil, I'll bring it back. Alright, it's coming to a boil. And what you want is it boiling so you can't stir it down. So if you stir it around real good and it's not boiling, it's not ready yet. You want a good roiling boil. Okay, and this is why also you want to use a large pot, because it's going to foam up. If there is a bunch of foam, you can scrape it off. This isn't really foaming, that's just air bubbles from it boiling. But if there is foam, you can either scrape it off. If there's a little bit, maybe I can get in the camera, barely any. You can scrape it off at this stage, or you can add a teaspoon of butter, a little bit more, sliver of butter, let's say. Okay, gives a little bit of foam. But yeah, butter will cut down on the foam, or you can just scrape it off. But there's not much, so I'm not worried about it either way. So I'm just going to add my liquid pectin now. And again, it's a rolling boil that you cannot stir down. Probably all you see is my arm or something. Just trying to get all of it. As awkward as I am at doing it. There we go. Good enough. Okay, so once it's in there, you get it stirred in good. And I'm going to set a timer for 1 minute. I'm going to let it boil away. A rapid boil for 1 minute. Now I don't bring it up to a boil on high heat, even though it would be quicker. I do it on a medium high heat because I want it to cook. I want that pectin that's in the berries already to cook. And I want to make sure, of course, it's food safe. And it doesn't really take much longer. This, while the camera was off, was maybe 5-6 minutes. Sugar heats up pretty quick. You want to be careful also, because it is boiling sugar. If this gets on your skin, you'll get a terrible burn. Most definitely, probably the worst you can get from food is probably sugar. Even hot oil, or touching a hot skillet or something. This sugar will stick to you and keep burning. So yeah, just keep stirring it so it doesn't foam up too much, boil up too much, or get messy. And that's all it takes, 1 minute. I'm going to turn it off from the heat, and I'm going to remove it from the heat. And turn off the timer, because no one needs to listen to that. Okay, so I'm going to grab the jars and we'll fill them. Alright, now the jam's ready to be canned. So I've got this thing here. It's just like a funnel for mason jars. It fits in there really nice. and I'm just going to use a ladle. Each time I take some out, I'm just going to give it a stir. This funnel will help keep all the jam from making a mess. I don't have to be so careful. You want to leave about 1/4 of an inch head space in each jar. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Just going to go along, fill up as many jars as make. Should this full recipe that I'll put in the description, it says it makes 8 jars, 250 milliliter jars, but I got 13.5 out of the full recipe. The recipe again is for blueberries. I'm using Haskaps, so they're a little larger than a blueberry. I didn't change anything in the recipe, but I got a higher yield because of the berries, obviously, and still worked out. Made a really nice jam, so it's the recipe I go with. Plus, of course, I'm Canadian, so I put maple syrup in everything, right? I don't, but I'm just joking. Yeah, I'll just go through there like that. Get these all filled. I won't bore you with it, and I'll come back when they're all filled and show you what next to do. So halving the recipe, I thought for sure would give you at least 6. I wanted to give me 5 and almost a half, so I'll have to live with that. That's fine. Still good. It's good jam. How many berries I ended up with. I already have, like I said, 13 other jars of the same kind of jam already made. They don't all come ripe at the same time, so you can't make it all at the same time unless you freeze them first. But like for this video or whatever, right, I took them off the bush and turned them into jam in the same day, so I don't want to be freezing them. This would be as fresh as I can possibly make it, right? Okay, so the next step, I have to put the lids on this and get it into the water bath and process it. Processing is 10 minutes for jam, and then you add time depending on your elevation. And where I live, how far I am above sea level, I add 5 minutes. So I'll be doing it for 15 minutes. Does not mean you need to be doing it for 15 minutes. You need to check a chart. Of course, the elevation canning chart on Google, I'm sure will pop up in a second if you type that in. Wherever we buy canning supplies, they usually have the canning supplier, whether it's Ball mason jars, or here in Canada where I live it's Bernardin's a big one. They also will have a canning book somewhere in the aisle with all the stuff. And those books are really handy. You have all the information you need in those books, plus recipes. So what I'm doing now is just making sure all the lips, I don't really need to do that one. I'm not going to process a jar that's not full. I'm just making sure there's no debris or anything that will get in the way of the seal. And what I'm doing is dipping a clean paper towel into the boiling water from the canning pot. I'm just wiping off anything that might interfere in the seal. And in the canning oil they also sell these things, just a magnet. You don't really need one or anything. It's kind of handy. So I just had some warm water, the canning lids, wash them first, and keep them ready in some water. So yeah, the magnet pulls the lids out. Super easy, you don't have to burn your fingers. You can use tongs, or you can just drain the water out and use your fingers. They're not that hot. It's up to you how hot you turn the stove up on them, right? Okay, so sometimes they stick together. Also keeps your fingers off them. Mine are clean, I hope, but in case they're not, right? Okay, so it's easy as that. Now what you want to do, put the rings on. Just want to put these on finger tight, but you want to make sure they're on straight. My jars are hot, so be careful. Okay, so I'm just going to go along and do this. This is why I only made a half batch for video also, is quicker, less stuff to show, right? I could fill the counter with jars, but it gets in the way. So yeah, you want it finger tight, you want it fairly tight. You don't want it so tight that air can't escape. There's some air will escape, and then when it cools, it'll suck the lid back down. Okay, so you got your lids on, everything's good to go. Here's the next step. Alright, here's my canning pot. It was boiling, I had the lid off. You get one of these in the canning aisle also. It grabs your jars. It is very convenient. You want to sit these in there. There's a little rack in the bottom to keep them off the actual bottom. That's very important. They don't break. You want to have space between them. And you want to make sure they're level. It's another reason you want headspace inside them, so no liquid rides up and gets between the seal and the jar. That's also why you'll see people say don't tilt them. And so the liquid inside does not rise up and get between the seal and the jar. Yeah, so that's all there is to it. Don't overfill your canner. I got them in there. I'm going to bring it back up to a boil. Let it sit for a minute, and then I'm going to set a timer. Again, it's 10 minutes to process jam. But depending on your elevation, you may have to add time. I'll be adding 5 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer, and I'll be back when it goes off. 15-minute timer has just gone off. Turning off the heat. Moving the lid. And let it sit for a minute or two if you like. Doesn't really matter at this point. I like to take them out right away. So I'm just going to remove them with this thing again. It's really easy. Just put it down below the lid. Do not tilt it. You'll be tempted to tilt it because the lid is covered in water. Do not tilt it. Again, the liquid inside may raise up and get between the seal and the lid. Okay. I'm just going to go along and take these out, and I'll show you what I do with them. Alright, there's a bit of shadow. The light's not that great, but you'll get the idea. So what I'm doing here is I got a cloth I put down on just the countertop, somewhere you're not going to disturb it for 24 hours. You don't want to just put it straight on a countertop. The cloth will soak up some water. It drips off of it. And it doesn't conduct heat as well as your countertop. So it's good. And you hear it's already popping. Yeah, we're moving them out. Being careful not to tilt them. Putting them on a clean cloth on your clean countertop. and leaving an inch or two of space between them as much as you can, just so that they can cool evenly all the way around. You know, ones beside are closer together because they were done a few days ago. But there, that's all there is to it. Now, these will sit there for 24 hours, don't touch them. That popping sound is the lid sealing, so you know you got a good seal. You can take the rings off, and I'll show you. This is one that was already done, so it sat for more than 24 hours. Take the lids right off for storage, and you can pull, you can hold it by the lid. You can tell it's sealed. Don't pull so much that it breaks the seal. Well, I don't even have it in the thing. So yeah, you can hold it by the lid. Whoops. That was awkward. But yeah, you can store them like this. They stack easier. You don't need the rings, only for when they're in the canning pot. Or if you open them up and you want to use the ring and the lid as a lid, you can do that too. But yeah, if you found any of this helpful or interesting, please subscribe. I'm always happy to welcome new friends here on the channel. I'm looking forward to get to know you all. But yeah, there you go. Haskap jam. Very tasty, very easy to make. Straight from the bush to the jar. It'll be ready tomorrow. I got this extra little bit. I'll put it in the fridge after it cools. And I have some all ready to eat, yeah? It's all good. So hope you're having a good day wherever you are, whenever you watch this. Peace.